I'm so glad y'all could join us for today as we continue our series with the Sisters of the Community of St. Mary in Suwanee, Tennessee, the Southern Province. And we're excited to welcome Sister Hannah back, who's going to be leading our discussion today. And just a few things here. I do have handouts from you, Sister Hannah, thanks to our very own Sarah Jurgen, who keeps us organized and who's up there listening in. So let me know when you want these distributed, and we'll distribute them. And I'll turn the lights down a little bit so we can get a better screen. But it's great to have all of you. Thank you guys for being with us, whether you're in person or you're online there. All right. Also, I wanted to update you guys on our Lent Madness bracket tournament. This is very important. I know that you've been waiting eagerly to find out. So far in third place, with 52% of picks correct, we have Debbie Staten and George Gazenda. Your winner, your Golden Halo winner. Yep, that happens. In second place, let her know, Betsy Tibbs, 62%. And in first place, 71%. So we'll see. Anything can happen. There are still, Sarah told me though, that there are still several people whose Golden Halo winner is still in. So it could, that's really the big question. And we decided there'll be prizes for, first place, second place, third place. So it's going to be exciting end to things. We also have Holy Week just around the corner. So please stay tuned to that. This Sunday is the last Sunday in Lent, and then we have Palm Sunday. There'll be Maundy Thursday service, 7 p.m. There's an overnight vigil where we're hoping to have people in the church overnight, staying awake into Good Friday. And then Good Friday, we have Station of the Cross at 11, service at noon or at 5:30. And then on Sunday, it's really good news and exciting. So 8:45 and 11. Yeah, we'll carry the cross in from 11 till noon. We'll carry it up, and we literally physically need help doing that. Because it's hard. And then it's in place for that service. And then the cross stays in the church, and there's quiet in the church all afternoon if you like to come and just spend some time there for what's called the adoration of the cross or veneration of the cross. That's on Good Friday. Yeah, the church is just open for prayer. All right, so I'll turn it over to Sister Hannah. And again, it's so great to have you as we're talking a little bit about balance, is it? And the rules of life, I'm seeing, perhaps. So we're looking forward to having you.
Thank you so much, Father Josh. I am so happy to be with you all. All I can see is the ceiling there, but it's a lovely ceiling at St. John in the Wilderness. And now I can see the cross. Now I can see a few people. So that's so exciting. Hello, people that I can see. And hello, people online. We have Will, Jilly, and Sarah. So I'm just so happy to be with you all. Again, always feels kind of weird, the Zoom thing, but we're making it work. We're making it work. So again, I'd like to thank Father Josh for the invitation to be back with you all. And if you remember the last time I spoke, North Carolina is my home state. So it's good to have at least my voice back home. So that's pretty exciting. So I'm going to start sharing the screen, and I think Josh or Sarah will let me know if there's any problems with that. Technology is fun, and by fun, I mean challenging. Okay, can everybody see that? Thumbs up, something, a loud cough. Okay, cool. Okay. So as Father Josh said, the topic for tonight is Benedictine Balance. The rocks on the screen is not something I did. I would not have the patience for that, but it's just a really nice photo that shows balance, what it can look like in many different ways. So a brief outline for tonight. I'm going to talk about the imbalance that exists not only in the year 2022, but also in the time of Benedict. And then, as Father Josh said, we're going to talk about Benedictine Balance, and the Benedictine motto that some of you all might be familiar with is Ora et Labora. And then we'll talk about rule of life. And later on in the talk, we'll go over the handout that Father Josh was referring to. So first, starting off with imbalance in our modern era. I can't remember if the last time I was virtually with you all, my background was introduced, but I worked as a hospital dietitian for 5 years in North Carolina, and I have my master's in nutrition, and I was a clinical registered dietitian. And so I really wanted the first few slides to be a little bit more interactive than normal and use that background of mine when we talk about imbalance. This is one of my favorite things I would do with patients and clients is go over portion distortion. So about 40 years ago, the standard size for a bagel was about 3 inches, about 140 calories. Doesn't sound too bad. Now the standard size for a bagel is 6 inches. Any guesses in the audience for how many calories this would be? Anybody? Is everybody on mute? That makes me sad.
Okay, now we're unmuted.
Okay.
Go ahead and just shout out your guess. 470.
280.
I feel like this is turning into Price is Right, like higher or lower. Price is Right is a great show, by the way. But okay, I got a few inputs. Sarah, did you have something? I saw you unmute.
320.
320. Okay, getting close, getting close. 350 calories.
Ah,
Okay.
okay.
And you would have to rake leaves for 50 minutes to burn off that. So think about the raking of the leaves for almost an hour with the portion sizes of the carbohydrates. And please continue, Father Josh. If I get cut off, just let me know. Can you all hear me still?
Yep. Thank you.
Okay, cool. The standard serving size of a Coca-Cola back in the 1980s was about 6.5 fluid ounces. Now you have to go to antique stores to find these in this portion size, and it was about 85 calories. Today, the standard size, like in a vending machine, is 20 ounces. Any guesses?
250.
Yeah. We have a 250, we have a 400.
Okay. Sarah, you look very studious over there. Anything?
I have someone off camera listening and telling me 240.
Somebody must have cheated. It is 240. It is 240.
Somebody works in retail.
Oh, there we go. There we go. So you would have to run for about 20 minutes to burn that off. And, you know, when you go out to eat or fast food, most people, the large size is 32 ounces, so even more calories. And Father Josh, this is the last one. Standard cheeseburger, 333 calories. And this is my favorite comparison because if anybody has not heard of the Luther burger, you can find it at the State Fair in my hometown of Raleigh, North Carolina. It is a very thick cheeseburger, but instead of buns, it's Krispy Kreme donuts because that's how we do it in North Carolina. So any guesses for the calories here?
Maybe 1,000.
Yeah.
Oh, it's over 1,000.
1250. 1300.
What? I can't hear you well on Zoom. What was your guess?
1,400.
Getting close, getting close. Okay, Sarah, so you feel like you're part of the team. Any?
My Raleigh native partner says 1750.
Okay. It is 1,100 calories, 67 grams of fat. So this is more than half of the recommended calories for an average adult. I didn't even calculate what you would need to do or what marathon you need to run to burn that off. So I have had the Luther burger because you need to, you know, just figure out what people are doing. Oh, there's also bacon on that too. It is, it's very heavy, very heavy. Don't recommend that every week, every month, or every 10 years. So that is the portion distortion part of this presentation. Thank you all for playing. So why did I talk about food when we're talking about balance? Because in the realm of balance, Americans struggle to eat a balanced diet. Perpetual job security here if I decide to go back to being a dietitian. God uses all of the ministries here, and this is not the first time I've used my background when I've given presentations. But again, the world of dietetics, they're not running out of jobs anytime soon. And also we're daily bombarded by advertisements. I mean, this was just a standard downtown stock photo I found online. The advertisements are everywhere. You hear it on the radio, you hear it on different apps and podcasts, and they're just physically near where we live and work. Contrasted with all of that is the pressure of how thin we have to look, especially with photoshops and women's magazines and covers. It's all about image. It's all about how much you weigh, being toned, being thin, keeping up appearances. And so the advertisements encourage us on one hand to eat all of the junk food, but also to look like this, to be this slim diet, another form of the extreme. So we have great imbalances just in our everyday life from advertisements and from what we see in the media. Not only does the internet bombard us with completely unrealistic body images or tempt us to overindulge with fast food, but we spend a lot of time on our screens. The average American spends over 8 hours a day looking at various kinds of screens. And for most people, they spend more time looking at either their tablet, phone, iPad, or computer than they do sleeping. The average amount of sleep Americans get per night is 6.5 hours compared to 8 hours a day of screen time. So again, there's this imbalance of a lot of time lost looking at screens compared to maybe going outside or doing some other things. And ever since the invention of the light bulb, the balance of day and night has gone out the window. It's an ancient balance. It's ingrained in us in our circadian rhythm, but with our ancestors would go to bed in the evenings, that's the time we ramp it up in our society. So even that inherent balance that we are born with that our ancestors had is also thrown off balance. And the problem with artificial light at night is it throws off our circadian rhythm. We are, as a human species globally, going through a widespread sleep loss epidemic. And our bodies need adequate sleep. There's a lot of things our bodies do while we sleep. Our bodies repair body cells and mechanisms, increase blood supply to muscles, make immune cells, repairs damaged cells, release certain hormones for growth and development. And people that chronically are sleep deprived, they're at a higher risk for diabetes, hypertension, obesity, heart disease, stroke, chronic inflammation, anxiety, Alzheimer's, dementia. And inadequate sleep is linked to decreased vaccine effectiveness and decreased memory and problem solving. So I share all of this in the beginning because living a balanced life isn't some abstract ideological goal. Living a balanced life is connecting with the rhythms we were created for. And when we get away from these balances and rhythms, our health actually suffers. Not only does our health suffer, our planet suffers. Our imbalances in our life causes the whole planet to suffer. The US produces more than 30% of the planet's total waste, even though it's only home to 4% of the world's population. A Columbia University study estimates that Americans throw out 7 pounds of materials per person every day, and that is 2,555 pounds of materials per American every year. With our excess consumption is excess waste. So I think I've made the point clear. We live in a society of imbalance. We indulge in excess food, especially junk food and empty calories, and are daily bombarded by advertisements for these products. We live with excess and unrealistic body image distortions. We live with excess screen time. We live with excess consumption of goods causing excess pollution. And we live on the other extreme with the deprivation of sleep. And yet, despite all of this information, we have a culture of scarcity. One of my favorite authors, Brene Brown, in her book Daring Greatly, wrote that we live in a culture of never enough. She asked different people a survey in how they would end the phrase never enough. And people said, never good enough, never perfect enough, never thin enough, never power enough, never wealthy enough, never successful enough, never smart enough, never safe enough, never extraordinary enough. And so we go around feeling less than. And so we spend money and time and consume certain products to help us with that never enough feeling. And we're also fond of saying, I never have enough time. But the truth is not that we don't have enough time, it's that we don't take the time. It's a widespread lack of intentional living, lack of being intentional about how we spend our time. Quaker pastor Richard Foster, who wrote the book Celebration of Discipline, which is another great read, especially for Lent, says, in our society, the adversary, the devil, majors in three things: noise, hurry, and crowds. He said, all three of these things keep us engaged in muchness and manyness and keep us trapped in superficial ways of living and a very stressful life and lead to a lack of spiritual depth. This goes in line with what Benedictine nun and scholar and writer Sister Joan Chittister said, that it takes a special love of life to control it before it sweeps us away in the clutter rather than cleanse us. Her answer, which is also my answer, as we're both Benedictine nuns, the balance from the rule of Benedict. But, just to start off, Benedict wasn't born in a world that was fully balanced back in his time in the 6th century in Italy, in Rome. And so I wanted to understand the context of his society when he wrote his rule. Now, this is not from a Sewanee frat party, just wanted to be clear. His society, like ours, was not one of balance. Where he was from, when he went to school in Rome, there was lots of excess. Excess drinking, excess prostitution, excess partying, excess political corruption. So his rule went against that. And even the spiritual life and the desert mothers and fathers and the monks that came before him, they had the extreme and excess on the other end. Sometimes they would spend years sitting on a pillar meditating. This photo is from the TLC show Hoarders. So if you want to know what vow of poverty doesn't look like, case in point. So the classic example of possessions possessing us and found in people that hoard, it's come to light more recently in the past years because of television shows. And you don't have to be a nun under the vow of poverty to know that excess accumulation of things is no kind of freedom at all. So Benedict's call for moderation is, again, just as important in his day as it is in ours. And now we get to ora et labora, which is Latin for pray and work. And when you enter the grounds of the convent here in Sewanee, you'll see that sign as you enter. Sister Malamary designed it so you'd have to kind of duck and bow and reverence so you don't hit your head on it. So you're kind of like forced humility as you go under the sign. The framework of our day is the Opus Dei, meaning work of God, the daily offices, morning prayer, noon office, evening prayer, and Compline. And before COVID, we had the daily Eucharist as well. At the time of Benedict, they had 8 daily offices, but the rhythmic succession of life was made up of prayer, study, work, and rest. So it's actually more than ora et labora, but that's just been the whittled down motto that's carried on. For all of these activities, they were equally respected, and all of them could become a way to the presence of God. Because if you remember the last slide I gave from my former talk with you all, Benedict believed that the divine presence was everywhere. Common myth about monks and nuns: we do not just pray all day. It's common even in 2022 when I go out to places, have to clarify that. That was never the case from the beginning. Benedict made clear that idleness was the enemy of the soul, and monks needed not just sacred reading, but also manual labor. He said the brethren should be occupied at certain times in manual labor, and again at fixed hours in sacred reading. So it's a combination of all the different ways of drawing near to God. Benedict stressed the importance of manual work as the great equalizer. Everyone, from the youngest to the oldest, from the least educated to the most educated, all of them worked in manual labor. And this was revolutionary for 6th century Rome and Roman culture. Benedict never said that manual labor is less than or less important than spiritual work, but equally as important as prayer and study. The monks would have verses of scripture memorized. They would meditate and ponder while they studied and while they worked outside. Benedict said, "He who labors as he prays lifts his heart to God with his hands." And I read a story of an older monk that was interviewed, and he said, "There's also rich symbolism in the routine of daily work. When I pull weeds in the garden, I confess my failings and pull the weeds from the garden of my soul. When I wash dishes, I ask God to help me be washed thoroughly, for I am a vessel of the Holy Spirit. When I gather the sheep in from the fields, I pray that the Good Shepherd may gather me home at last." So there's this idea that all of our life can be lifted up as prayer and time to reflect and talk to God and just kind of be present to what we're doing. With the Benedictine Balance, there was no division or dualism between spirit and between body. He didn't think that spiritual things were superior and set apart, as in the case of some philosophies, Gnosticism theologies. Benedict's theology was rooted and grounded in the incarnation. In one part of the rule, Benedict said he wanted his monks' minds to be in harmony with the voices. This was in the section of the rule of the singing of the Psalms. He said to not just sing the Psalms day in and day out and don't really have a connection to what you're praying and chanting, but for the monks to really pray what they're singing and believe what they're singing and have that mind and body integration. It's all about being fully present in each moment. And the last part of the section of humility in the rule of Benedict, following up from Sister Elizabeth's talks, he writes, "A monk always manifests humility in his bearing, no less than in his heart. It is evident at the work of God, in the oratory, the monastery, or the garden, on a journey or in the field or anywhere he stands, whether he sits, walks, or stands." So again, it's all about unity of person. If you're well balanced on the inside, it shows on the outside. So now that we've covered some aspects of Benedictine balance, what does this all look like in real life? What does it look like on paper? So I'm asked several times when I do speaking engagements, what's a day in the life like for me, for the Sisters of St. Mary here in Sewanee? I know you're all going to be super jealous. We're normally all up by 5:40, so I know the vocations will be coming in for that. And we have quiet time between 6:30 and 7:30. Some of us get their quiet time outside walking their dogs. Some of us, one sister does the rosary and does some spiritual reading. Two of the sisters, myself and Sister Madeline Mary, we sit in silence in the chapel. But again, there's a good hour of quiet time in the morning. 7:30, we have morning prayer followed by breakfast. 9 a.m. to 12 is work, and that varies for each sister. So my work as treasurer is working with our bookkeeper, working with QuickBooks in the office. For Sister Felicity, it's going to seminary. For the other sisters that are spiritual directors, it's spiritual direction. Could be working with employees or volunteers or interns. I make soap one day a week. Sister Felicity makes candles one day a week. or part of it could be like preparing to see you all, sermon preparation, teaching preparation, presentation preparation. At 12 noon, we have the noon office, followed by lunch. 1:30 to 5, again, work, and some downtime for rest and some downtime for exercise, going out for a hike. 5 o'clock, evening prayer. 6 to 7:30 is the chill time of day. We might watch the news or have recreation, do some reading. 7:30 is compline, and then rest and bed. And it's been interesting that during the pandemic, past interns have reached out to us and saying, I really want to be connected to the offices again, because I can see why that vow of stability kind of helps ground you and ground your days, because if your days are different every single day, it kind of makes you feel disoriented in an already disoriented world. And so one intern specifically reached out to me saying, I want a copy of the services and the schedule, because I really want to have that framework of the day like Benedict instructed. There's a way to be deeply connected to our Benedictine tradition without being a nun, and that's by becoming an oblate. This was taken from our website, so for more information, you can go there. But oblates are lay extensions of the community. They live in the world. They follow their own interpretation of the Benedictine rule consistent with their life, again, because they're not under the vows that we are. It's different depending on their life situation. They can be men or women, married, single, lay, or ordained. They grow in their spiritual path with God through prayer, study of the rule of Saint Benedict, and doing the daily office each day, at least morning and evening prayer each day for life. And they try to live lifestyles characterized by stability, balance, and simplicity. To become an oblate of our community, there's an application online and a 2-year intensive formation process. You have weekly assignments, book readings, and mentorship with Sister Malamary. And you both decide together and try to discern whether God is calling you to be this lifetime commitment of an oblate to the community. We currently have 7 oblates that have the lifetime commitment already done, and there's a special medal they get. And we have 2 oblates in training. For those who don't want to have an intensive 2-year formation process, maybe don't have the time for that, but are still really connected to this monastic tradition and want the balance and write a rule of life, there's also the Associates program. And again, this is taken from our website. And there's this quote, "A rule of life is like a rose trellis, which enables the flowers to grow towards the sun, just as we need to grow towards God." Associates, like the oblates, could be men, women, lay, or ordained, married, single. And they want to commit themselves to a rule of life and friendship with the community. They help us immeasurably by prayer, service, spiritual and material support, and their dedicated lives in the world. We currently have 200 associates. So now, if you grab your handout that Sarah was so kind to give to you all virtually or in person, these are guidelines to take with you if you feel the call to start writing your own rule of life. You don't have to, become an associate to do a rule of life, but just for your own spiritual discernment as we continue to finish up Lent. When Sister Elizabeth meets, Sister Elizabeth is in charge of the associates. When she meets with them to kind of figure out the rule of life based on a person's situation, these are the framework questions, she says. How is God calling you to love God with all your heart, soul, and mind? So some sample examples on the handout. This could be by regularly being involved in church with church attendance, having set aside time each day for meditation and quiet time for spiritual study, going on retreats, and setting aside time for prayer. The next framework is love of neighbor. This could be volunteering in your community, time for family and friends, intentional time, outreach and intercessory prayer, praying for friends and family in the world. For loving yourself, which is a key part of a rule of life, getting enough sleep, following a healthy diet, that balance, finding a mentor, getting regular exercise, taking care of yourself. And because we do care for the environment, also love of creation is built into the rule of life for those wishing to become associates here. Recycling, taking care of pets, time outside away from screens, gardening, and some environmental conservation. So that is all I'll say about this, which is pretty much the framework here, but that is for you to keep, a little souvenir from our talk tonight. But I wanted to also just give you a sample rule of life. So one of our associates, Joshua Boer, he later discerned a call to become an oblate, but first he was an associate for several months. He graciously provided his rule of life for us to kind of see what it looks like lived out in a person that's not a nun. So for the part, love God with all my heart, soul, and mind, he wrote, he will continue studying the Bible, theology, and spirituality. He made a commitment to read a book a month on a spiritual topic. He came out to morning prayer twice a week at the community before COVID. And when that was not possible, he also had a backup plan, reading the lessons on his own and meditating on them. For the love of neighbor, he lived this out by intercessory prayer. He works at the seminary at EFM as a mentor there, so he would use those prayers as part of his intercessory prayer list. Also had a personal prayer list and committed to the Anglican cycle of prayer for different churches and seminaries. And for him, he lives with his mother-in-law. He lives with his wife and mother-in-law. And so the love of neighbor for him also meant spending quality time with both of them and ensuring that they have emotional support, and also setting aside a time just for fun with both of them. And also under love of neighbor, he made a commitment to treat those he encountered with dignity and as the face of God, and based that off of a book, The 10 Essentials of Dignity, and something that he really took to heart and reflected on. And also associates contribute material support. So the monthly distribution was another commitment for the love of neighbor. For loving of himself, his commitment was to improve his health, better diet, increased exercise, trying to walk or bike to work, meditative time. I mean, just real simple, 10 minutes a day. Continue to identify and engage in activities that bring joy and laughter. You know, it's really easy to feel like in our busy world, or even discerning a call to become an associate or oblate, it's prayer and study and that's it. But it's also setting aside time for joy and things that bring you joy, and have fun and work and play where it doesn't feel like work because it's play. And he also made a commitment to find a spiritual mentor and set a time frame for him. Let us pray. God of the universe, you design and hold all of creation in your loving hands. With Saint Benedict as our model, inspire us with ways of bringing balance to our lives. May every moment of our days be offered up as prayer, and may we remember that your presence is with us always. Amen. I hope these examples of rule of life and the call to balance spoke to you all, and I'm really happy to hear whatever questions you have.
Thank you so much, Sister Hannah. That was really,
You're welcome.
that was really neat, and gosh, that was really helpful on so many levels. So I would love to just see what questions you all have about this idea of balance, you know, from your own lives, just comments or questions, whether you're online or you're here in person. There's I think there's a couple of things, whatever comes to your mind, obviously, but the idea of balance in general, I think, is one that we all struggle with, right? We all struggle to find a really good, healthy balance. You know, I'm in one stage of that a lot of you all have been through, with having little kids and, you know, having kids at home and work and so forth. But I think that's applicable for any of us. And the other one is this idea of having a grace-filled structure that becomes this way of ordering life intentionally. So those are two really powerful things. I wonder if you have any questions or any comments about either of those topics, or how to bring those into our lives more. And if you do, why don't you come up here and stand up and you can ask your questions so that Sister Hannah and others can hear you.
Hi, Sister Hannah. How are you?
Good.
Can you see me? Oh, there I
I
am.
can.
Okay, I'm Patrice. I just recently had a big change in my life that has added a lot more to my plate. And I'm in the middle of trying to discern what I have to let go of in order to handle that. I mean, and even part of that discernment, I guess, is even wondering if I should be handling it. You know, it was sort of a job given to me. So anyway, I love the whole premise of the job. It's pollinator advocacy. It's you know, it's organizing a pretty large program and for the city. And it's a lot for me to get my arms around. And I only found out about it in mid-February, and it's crunch time. You know, pollinator month is June. I'm organizing a lot and trying to, you know, learn a lot at the same time about the job. Any recommendations?
I think I shared the last time I was here that one of the most stressful parts of my life in the past 7 years has been caregiving for our older sister with dementia. And I know it's different from caring for small children, but I think whether it's a stressful job, small children, or caregiving, or any kind of big thing that kind of overwhelms you, sometimes it's important just to get breaks for at least like 5 minutes a day. So one of the things I would do to kind of recenter myself, which might be good for anybody that has a stressful life, is just going outside, set your timer on your phone for 5 minutes, and having those mental breaks. It actually, research shows, makes you more creative, more present, kind of decreases the anxiety and stress. So maybe a good thing for you in this situation is just setting aside time for silence and discernment, and either going forward, getting some pastoral support, or just kind of figuring out what you're being called to do and what you're not being called to do. So like in that earlier slide, the temptations for noise and hurry and crowds, I mean, it's really hard and countercultural to say, okay, time out. I need 5 minutes to myself. I need some time for discernment. So just setting those small steps, you know, might be good.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Other questions or curiosities, comments that you guys have just coming up? I think that you have one. I think that Patrice's question brings to mind a really good, just a struggle that's there for a lot of us is I think what we end up doing is we get excited about things, and so we sort of we often step into things that are kind of bigger than us, and then we quickly realize that it feels like, to use the language of scarcity, that there's not enough time, right, to do what we want to do and what we even feel called to do, and to have this real sense of balance, this sense of self, you know, time for others, time for joy, you know. And so I think I'm really curious about what you would say about finding that balance and how the rule creates a structure for day-to-day life that allows for you know, engaging in what you're called to, but not doing too much, you know, and trying to overdo
Yeah.
it.
There's actually a section in the rule about like monks who are overwhelmed. Like Benedict knew about human frailty. There's also a part that says, like, when you're doing the chapel bell, if you notice one monk is running behind, ring the bell really slow, like give him some time. Like, we've all had groggy mornings. Like, Benedict is just the best. But in the parts where in the rule where it's like, if you have a task that's too overwhelming, like, your duty is to ask for help. And because of work with Sister Mary Zita, I was called to be part of a caregiver support group. And one of the things that I think is crucial, whether you're a caregiver or not, is this idea of having like a glass jar and writing down like practical things. Like, I need help, like cooking a meal one day a week. It was for people who were overwhelmed with caregiving, and people kept on saying, how can I support you? And they were so stressed they couldn't even think of anything. So the idea was, I need someone to help me with groceries one day a week, not like financially, but just somebody to go and drive and get them as I'm caring for a spouse. And so just like practical ways we can care for each other, because I think people have the best intention of, I want to support you, but sometimes people are so stressed they can't give concrete things. So I think just trying to, in our more enlightened moments or calmer moments, say, you know, what I really need from Father Josh or from my spouse or from my coworker is somebody that can listen to me for half an hour once a week, or somebody that can run some errands for me while I'm stuck with the little kids. Or I just really like the idea of like the practical ways you can support each other jar, and then friends can grab that. So that was something that just kind of stayed with me.
Yeah. Well, I think asking for help is a hard thing, and that's there's a lot of grace there for sure when we are willing to verbalize that, and it's interesting you talk about caregivers being so overwhelmed they can't even articulate the help they need, because I've seen that in ministry. Yeah, just people so buried in trying to take care of someone else that they don't know, they can't see the next day or the next week. But yeah, that's a great one too with other ministry projects or with life in general, is figuring out ways to kind of share the burden. And I think that it's one of the things I reflect on a lot. I think for those of us that have some level of affluence, we often haven't had to do that because we've been able to rely on ourselves and we've been able to afford help and so forth. Whereas I think a lot of communities where there's not as much affluence and where people, kind of struggle to get by, like they're used to car trouble, and they're used to, like needing to like eat together, and they're used to having people watch their kids. And that creates this like level of community support that's really grace-filled at times.
I think support is essential. I mean, Benedict lived in a cave for years alone as a hermit before he founded the monastery. And there's a reason he founded a monastery. He knows he needs community. And I think realizing we're all in it together is a huge piece of the puzzle, because we are like, pull us up by our bootstraps, individualist American society. And that's all kind of a lie. I mean, we all live in community, whether one way or another. And I think it's really important to remember that, especially when the time gets hard, that you're not an island, you have connections, and the reaching out for help is a moment of extreme bravery and strength and not weakness.
What would you say to like your typical Episcopalian, if you were to have a dream for them about the ways in which they would step into the role of Saint Benedict in their own lives? What are just some of the things that you could imagine Episcopalians doing to add this stability and balance?
The intern that reached out to me for stability and balance, her favorite daily office was the noon office, because it really was the center of her day, literally with hours. But that was a way to kind of recall her to the presence of God. I'm sure you can remember the lines of Mother Julia Gata, "Let us recall the presence of Christ." I mean, it's just kind of in there. And so I think we need reminders, whether it's like an alarm on our phone or saying a 15-minute daily office, but just reminders for our own mental and spiritual health to be like, okay, after 2 hours of work, I'm going to go maybe take a quick walk for 5 minutes and recenter, maybe have, there's different guidelines for families in the Book of Common Prayer, different pieces of scripture. I grew up fundamentalist Baptist, so we had memory verses. I would love for Episcopalians to bring back memory verses, not all out of context or weaponized. Let me just put that in the paraphrase. But I think just the grounding of the presence of God, whether it's through the daily office, if you have time for that, or just a quick prayer. When I worked in the hospital system, my intercessory prayer would be as I was walking to work. I would park far away in the hospital parking lot, so I had a really long walk, and I used that time just walking into work for intercessory prayer. So again, Benedict isn't imagining everybody's going to become a monk, but there's just different things you can do to incorporate the presence of God where you are.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. I mean, one of the things you're saying, which is really neat to just think about, is you're saying basically have a time each day, the same time, where, in the monastery, like the bells call you to prayer. And for us, it could be an alarm on your watch or your phone.
Yep.
That the idea being that you're actually going to stop whatever you're doing because what you're doing is less important than your relationship with God. And you're going to like put it aside and you're going to take, whether it's 5 minutes or whether it's 20 minutes to say a daily office, you're going to take that time each day. And like that becomes the stabilizing structure.
Daily office and time for meditation and time for intercessory prayer. If you want to form community, one of the most meaningful things you'll ever hear somebody say is, Father Josh, I prayed for you every day this week. I mean, like that, it's what we owe to each other is the prayers. We're all part of the lowercase Catholic Church, the body of Christ. There's lots of prayer vigils and weekly prayer sessions for the people of Ukraine, for instance. We have to recall our common humanity too. So I think it's not just about the worship, it's also about meditation, and it's also about intercessory prayer, because it can heal a lot of people knowing somebody's praying for you each day or each week. So there's so many opportunities, and the Book of Common Prayer is rich with lots of them. There's actually a litany for in times of war, in times of crisis. It's at the very end of the Great Litany. And that has been very powerful. I started praying that regularly during the pandemic. And so there's just so much that you can kind of plumb the depths of the Episcopal Church. I have a Roman Catholic mentor who wrote a book on Rule of Benedict that I've been kind of interviewing for these talks I've given you. And she's like, the Episcopal Church got it right, which is really nice. I should have quoted it in an interview, but because we have the daily office built into our prayer book as opposed to the Roman Catholic Missal. I don't know that much about the Roman Catholic Missal, but basically the Episcopalians and our prayer book are more grounded with that daily rhythm than some other faith traditions. So I mean, we have it. We have the Via Media. We have the middle way. It's just a matter of, like you said, setting that intention. And again, I get it. Lives are busy, kids, family, work, stresses. That's why 5 minutes a day. Think of it as like a smoke break, but for your soul and not addictive. I mean, like addictive, but in like a healthy way, like in a non-lung cancer way. Just think if people can take a smoke break, you can take a prayer break. You know what I'm saying? I'm not trying to.
Yes, absolutely.
Get addicted to the Lord. I'm thinking like a youth pastor now, but at the cancer center where I worked, we had a healing garden and patients would go out in there. And that was a great place for me to eat my lunch away from my phone. I mean, I had to have the work pager with me, of course, if there was something, but eating your lunch away from your phone outside, it's not supposed to be the Olympics of the spiritual life. Benedict is very, very grounded and down to earth. He was the first monk to be like, we need 8 hours of sleep a day. None of this getting up at 3 a.m. crap. And so he's very practical.
Yeah, and I loved hearing that from you, from some of the ways that you've incorporated prayer into your life. It's because it shows that it's about the intentionality, right? And you're saying, I'm going to park over there each day, and I know that as I walk, that's time for prayer. That's maybe intercessory prayer or something special. Other questions that you guys have or comments as you hear Sister Hannah talk about the rule of life and living a balanced life? Yeah, that's a great question, because we're talking about sleep, especially. Patrice was just asking again about quieting yourself at night, as you're going to sleep and as you're trying to rest, what sort of things that you've experienced there and what recommendations you have about keeping that part balanced.
Compline, it's in the prayer book. It's very short. There's an app called the Mission of St. Clair that has all the daily offices on your phone with music and chanting. One of the optional Psalms is Psalm 91. So again, just that prayer at the end of the day, time to just kind of rest in the Psalms, rest in prayer, offer up to God the day. Some of our interns really liked the night prayer from the New Zealand prayer book, where it says, Lord, it is night. What is done has been done. What has not been done has not been done. let it be. I mean, just listen to Let It Be by the Beatles too. I mean, so there's some great prayers that are out there, but people just don't know about. But I would recommend looking up the Compline, whether on your computer or on your phone. It's a short prayer that we do, and it really does kind of just say, you know, the day is over with. I'm going to give it up to God instead of ruminating over it and overactivity and hold it on at night, which is, again, I have not arrived. I'm on the journey with you all, but these are just some resources to share with you all.
Yeah, and Compline's in the prayer book, as many of you know. Other questions? We should probably wrap it up soon, but any other final questions or thoughts that you guys have? Folks online, you're welcome as well to jump in.
I must say, I enjoy the evening prayer that makes Thursday.
Wednesday, yeah. Well, we do evening prayer each Wednesday
Wednesday.
at 4:30. And it's, I mean, I know that you all live this each day, but it's, I can't tell you how much grace is found in having a few other people that show up and are there to pray with you, you know? And I say that as someone who struggles to keep the evening office, you know, like that for me, like I can do morning prayer as part of my structure of my work week really, really well. I need that. But like on evening prayer, I struggle to stop. But on Wednesday, I've got people that are there with me. And so
people are counting on you. Yeah. Then it's a whole different mindset.
Yeah. And so now we get to enjoy this in Lent, you know, where we've got Wednesday and Thursday. And I'm like, yes, 2 days a week. It reminds me, I think I've told some of you this story, but like you hear stories about Desmond Tutu, where when he was coming up to Swanee to visit the university or to speak there, I know he had a grandson or daughter at at St. Andrew's Swanee, a boarding school there. But the stories were that when it came time for the daily office, he would just ask the driver of the car to pull over on the side of the road, and he'd say, hey, would you like to come back here and we'll say evening prayer together? And it's like, who would do that, you know? Yeah, Desmond Tutu would, and it sounds pretty good. Like imagine your life revolve around prayer.
One of my priest friends went on vacation to the one of the beaches, and so it was just like it was in the night and the ocean waves were crashing, and she turned to her friend who was not a priest and was like, do you want to say Compline? And so they did, you know, because the priest had her BCP ready, and they had Compline on the beach. So I mean, that's the thing that Benedict wants, is prayer is everywhere, not just inside church, not just for nuns. The whole purpose of the Benedictine life is that everything is a prayer. Washing the dishes, a prayer. You know, weeding outside, not weeding. Weeding is a prayer. I mean, like cooking dinner is a prayer. You know, like you're cutting up onions, you're saying a prayer for those who are hungry. I mean, yeah. So it really is like the goal is that all of life is a prayer, and it's not just confined to inside the church. Because again, it's about the incarnation. You know, it's about body, mind, and spirit all as one. And God is not limited to the church. God is not just found in St. John's the Wilderness. God is not just found in the convent. I mean, we can't contain God even though we keep on trying.
Yeah. Well, and talking about manual labor at the beginning of the presentation, I think all of us have found that having time when you're doing something with your hands, you know, you're outside in the yard, and, you know, it just really is so good for the soul, right? When you take that time, you know, to garden or to paint or, you know, anything like that, it's very prayerful as well. Yeah. Well, this is so good. There's so much to think about. I think I have a longing to have, you know, this sort of more of a structure to my life in a number of ways. So yes, reeling me in.
I'll send you the application.
So I occasionally will just like write down in my notebook, I'll be like, okay, rule of life, rule number 143, which is whatever number I pick. When I stumble across something that I know would be good for me. So thank you so much, Hannah, for your wisdom today and for the sharing about how this tradition is grounded in St. Benedict and in the church. And we're looking forward to one more session with you guys, right? Yeah.
Last time I'm with you all, and I feel very close to you all. And I hope that if I'm ever in North Carolina again, I can see you all incarnationally in the flesh. But it's been a real honor. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I just sent you guys a note and I said, you're always welcome here. So for all of you, anytime.
Like Benedictine hospitality. What?
All right. Okay. Have a good night, everybody. Thanks so much. Bye.